Welcome back to the news today. This is the Daily Debate. Well, as elections confirmed this week, Tunisia remains a standout example in the Middle East. The country that sparked the Arab Spring nearly 4 years later has come out a relative success in terms of democracy in the region. Well, Tunisians have approved the new constitution and on Sunday voted in their second free election. Yet despite this move towards democracy, the country is the largest source of foreign fighters for the extremist Islamic State group. Well, joining me tonight is senior Middle East analyst Ali Waked and Dr. Brandon Friedman from the Moshe Dayan Center for Middle East and African Studies. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
First, let's take a look at what our viewers around the world had to say with Nurit Zunger. Nurit, what do you have for us?
Good evening, David. So Tunisia has this parliamentary vote, a clear move towards secularism, but as you mentioned, a very high rate of recruitment. Tunisian officials put it at something like 2,400 people. As you mentioned, that goes up to 3,000. Just for comparison, that's around 400 in Egypt, another famous country of the Arab Spring. So there's definitely an interesting issue here to discuss. We asked our viewers if this Tunisia vote can actually, the steps towards democracy, if they can beat out this extremism that does exist, that is being recruited at least in the country. Our vote globally, let's take a look. 63% said no, a little bit pessimistic, not surprisingly. 32% said yes. So let's take a look at a few of the viewers, what they had to say. Mario said it's been a positive result, an outcome after all. He actually references the Jewish community in Jerba, saying it's an important Jewish community. It's been there thousands of years. He uses that to show it's basically that Tunisia has been among the most open countries of the Arab world, that this predates, in fact, this parliamentary election. M. Haik goes a different direction. He says, for now, Tunisia's voters are more concerned with jobs than theology. The government needs to act wisely so that doesn't change. There's a very important point there. Economic dissatisfaction is a big fuel for revolution, of course. Where that turns into a sort of breeding ground for extremism is a big question. Messan said not at all, because what feeds extremism is the blind belief and misinterpretation of religious law. He says the election won't allow extremism to be overcome in Tunisia. It's a separate issue. And let's just end with Issa, who said terror groups will recruit no matter what. And in this case, the lack of a total dictatorship is what could be helping them. He says, look at Iraq. A great point there, and really a possibility worth discussing, that new freedoms and a move towards secularism in Tunisia has in fact perhaps allowed terror groups to preach and recruit even more at ease than in a dictatorship. So I'm sure your debaters can answer that, and I'll pass it back to you.
Well, thank you very much, Nurit Zunger. Now, let's talk about Tunisia here for a moment, a country that is credited with sparking the Arab Spring now as this bread vendor, if I recall, he was, lit himself on fire in protest of government policy now. As we've seen, democratic elections take place just now in Tunisia. They have presidential elections set for November 27th. Seems to be some positive steps towards democracy, or towards civil freedoms. Do you agree? Do you think that Tunisia today still represents something positive that came out of the whole Arab Spring?
It does represent, of course, and I think it's not only today, David. The Tunisian managed to share the political life 1 year ago when the winning party of the last elections, the Islamic Party of Al-Nahda, accepted to share the government and actually to quit from the government and give technocrats and other Democrats
There's
forces.
been some significant compromise within the government.
Of course, and it came after two political assassinations that took place in Tunisia, and the fear of the Tunisian population that radical Islamic groups are trying to use the platform of Al-Nahda in order to gain more influence in the society and to put more violence in the Tunisian society. So
are they succeeding?
For the moment, they are not succeeding, and we saw that in the day of the elections, there were no special incidents. The rallies that took place at the eve of the elections were totally calm, with no confrontations between the two blocs, the Al-Nida, who won the election, and between Al-Nahda. And the fact that the NGOs, the Tunisian NGOs, and the fact that the syndicates and all the social groups and the civil society played a huge role since day one of the revolution brought this situation that we saw in the last 2 days in Tunisia. But I'm afraid that Tunisia does not reflect the whole picture of the Arab world.
Unfortunately,
and including
not.
In Tunisia, we should not exaggerate the gap between the winning party, the leading party, Al-Nida, and between the Islamic Al-Nahda. The gap is so close of 10 to 12 seats in the among the 217 seats of the parliament. The Islamics still have important influence in the political life in Tunisia, and I do not suggest to exaggerate in these elections, both for Tunisia and also for the general Arab world.
Well, now on the other side of the coin here, Dr. Friedman, we've seen, as far as most expert reports can say, that Tunisia has also generated the most foreign fighters for the Islamic State group now in Iraq and Syria. Some 3,000 young people have reportedly left Tunisia, and not religious young men and women either, youth really coming out of society here to go join this extremist group. Can you explain this in any way, looking at the situation there?
Yeah, I think first, to put it in perspective, Ali's comments were right on point. First of all, when you talk about the Islamic State and you compare the Islamic State to Al-Nahda, the Islamic State, I think's ideology is something that we would probably characterize as much more radical than, even the Islamists in the Tunisian political sphere. And then when you're talking about Tunisia itself, you have to talk about the coast versus the interior. The coast is much more Europeanized. There are more economic opportunities. And when you talk about the interior, you're talking about the forgotten Tunisia, the Tunisia that hasn't really been governed, the state hasn't quite reached. And so it's the youth there that perhaps see no chance, no opportunity to better their lives in the short to medium term. And for them, they see the Islamic State going off to fight in Syria and Iraq as potentially an opportunity. They can get paid, they can create for themselves a new and powerful identity. It's a form of self-actualization, self-empowerment, and a powerful ideology behind it.
You think to overcome this sort of rampant inequality, these economic downturns in all these countries, is that a common theme, would you say, across the Arab world that's pushing youth to go join extremist groups?
Look, let's put the Tunisian number in perspective. There are around 10 million Tunisians, right? And the reports say roughly 3,000 foreign fighters from Tunisia going to Syria and Iraq. Let's look at Jordan. Jordan has less than 7 million people. I think 6,300,000 people, right? They've had almost as many foreign fighters. I think the number is 2,089. If I'm
it's a lot easier to get to Iraq and Syria from Jordan.
Well, yeah,
something to do.
But I think the point is, and there are 2,500 foreign fighters from Saudi Arabia. The population's much bigger. They have 28 million people. On a per capita basis, Jordan is producing many more foreign fighters than Tunisia, and Jordan's our neighbor. So, if we think about it, the numbers can be misleading, and connecting the foreign fighters in Syria and Iraq to the fact that there's elections in Tunisia can also be misleading in the sense that there's more than one Tunisia. The Europeanized Tunisia of the coast, which is what much of the media focuses on, is not the media of the interior. And let's keep in mind, in 2010, the uprising started in the interior.
Well, now, Ali, a good example he mentioned here of Jordan now also generating many young radicals. Two countries, Tunisia, Jordan, that are relatively stable in the Middle East right now with positive prospects for moving forward economically with the democratic process, really, if not just that alone. Do you see any common trends here between such different countries as Jordan and Tunisia in terms of the recruitment towards extremism?
I don't think that the numbers are special to Tunisia and Jordan. As Dr. Friedman said, the numbers are relatively the same for many people. The issue is the percentage of the numbers in regard of the general population to the demography in the state. But I think that there is a wave towards Islam and to wave political Islam and to wave towards radical Islam. And I compare what happened in the world, including in Egypt and Tunisia, when the stock markets are going high. There are days where investors want to see their money and they sell, so the stock market comes down. This is what is happening to the Muslim Brotherhood and to Al-Nahda. It's going down, but still the stream is towards the political Islam. The Arab world, all the studies prove the Arab population in the whole world, from the Maghreb to the Mashriq, from the east to the west, want to see the Islam in their life. Now the question is, what Islam are they seeking? Is this the Islam represented by Al-Nahda, or Islam represented by Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State? We should make no mistake. The Islam is the main issue that is regrouping the Arabs in the whole world around this idea. There is no place to socialism, no to nationalism, even not to pan-Arabism. It's Islam. Now the question is, what is the image of Islam, and which Islam
It seems
the
to
Arab world
vary
is going?
across the world now, perhaps more than ever in history. All the varied interpretations, definitions being put out there of Islam. Many groups, really from on both sides of the world today now, purporting that they have the correct version, that they're leading the flag, carrying the flag, leading the charge for Islam
Yeah, and of
worldwide.
course, and I think what made the big service to the campaign of Al Nida, it's the pictures of what the atrocities of the Islamic State, and the fact that there are Tunisian fighters in the ranks of the Islamic State helped Al Nida. Did you know that it was the Tunisian preachers who called women to go and to do sexual jihad in Syria and Iraq to help the fighters, to help the mujahideen there? So we should not exaggerate this result in Tunisia. Still, the people are looking for Islam, and still Islamic elements are waiting to the opportunity to take control of the political life in Tunisia.
I think that's absolutely right. I think that Islamism is providing the only magnet, or the only, how should we say it, beacon in what is basically a situation where you have a region with many broken states. But I think that the idea that there are many interpretations of Islam, and really what needs to happen is, one interpretation needs to prevail over the other, can be misleading, because it can almost be a red herring here.
But is that the natural outcome of such a conflict here, where sides will conflict until one emerges the victor?
No, and I'll tell you why. It doesn't have to be, because really the phenomenon that Ali's describing, and I think he's right on in the sense that Islamism has really become one of the main, if not the primary choice for most Arab Muslims, is the idea that the state has failed many of the Arab Muslims in the region for 20 or 30 years, and it's not just in North Africa, it's not just here in the Levant, it's really across the Middle East. And so if the region is going to have another option, if Arab Muslims are going to have another option in the region apart from the various strands of Islamism, the state is going to have to step up. And I think that Tunisia is a sign that perhaps it can happen, that it's positive, it's a positive development. But really, it's not just Tunisia. It has to happen across the region.
There's been no credible governance in any of these countries, which I think we've seen in Iraq too, where you have the entire Iraqi army, very well equipped and much larger in numbers than the Islamic State fighters, turn and run because they didn't see a reason to stand up and fight and die for essentially a broken government.
Because it's corrupt. The army in Iraq has been an instrument for sectarian advancement, the empowerment of the Shias at the expense of Iraqi Sunnis. And so when you have misgovernance or bad governance throughout the region, then what are people going to turn to in order to empower themselves? They want to have an answer. They want to know that there's something better out there. And look, the preachers, the mosque, offers them something else, that the state really has manifestly failed them in the region for the last 40 to 50 years.
Ali, is Tunisia a good example of the opposite trend of that? Is this a place where good governance is emerging?
I think so, and the fact that there were peaceful transition of power before the elections between Al-Nahda and their political rivals, and now what we saw in the elections and the rallies before the elections, and the fact that Al-Nahda admitted that they lost the elections, and they blessed Al-Nida for their victory. All the signs show that there is something special in the Tunisian example. I want to mention that between Al-Ghannouchi, the leader of Al-Nahda, and between Erdogan, there were a huge discussion when Erdogan pushed the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt to present for the presidential. The Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt were determined to present for deputy president and to have 3-4 social portfolios. And
they wanted more of a compromise within the government.
And with the pressure of Erdogan and other leaders of the Muslim Brotherhood, global Muslim Brotherhood, the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt fall into this trap of the elections and lost the election and lost part of their credibility. But what I want to say, David, is that the Al-Nahda is presenting something else, and I think the fact that they accepted the results, they accept the results of the democracy, will allow them to gain more popularity. They are the most organized party in Tunisia. Al-Nida it's a group of, figures, political figures from the right, from the left, from the center, who are around the secular idea and the Western democracy. They have nothing in common but the fear from the political Islam. Still, when you saw in the bureaus of vote the militants of the activists of Al-Nahda in comparison to all the other, it's clear that Al-Nahda is the most important organization. Yet
perhaps we need to see more Tunisian-style compromise in some of these conflicts in the Middle East.
Well, look, I think it's a good start, but I think the proof will be in the pudding in Tunisia, like anywhere else. The winners are going to have to demonstrate that they can govern, that they can deliver the goods to the Tunisian people. The Tunisian people are going to have to look at their new government and say, this government potentially offers me a better life, a way forward, an improvement on what has been the status quo, the rampant corruption that existed in Tunisia prior to 2000.
For now, we wait and see. But Dr. Brandon Friedman and Ali Waked, thank you both for being with us today for the Daily Debate. And we'll be right back after the break with One on One.